Can we pre-approve this, Brian, before you put it up?
So anyway, I'm sure we'll cover a lot of things that'll probably irritate people, and some guys will agree with. Because anytime you talk about this, there's like these far opposing sides of the fence, and there's some middle of the road. So
I just can't buy into the whole face paint thing. That's so
like special ops. You put it on, you just feel.
But then you got to wash your face.
And then when it came to the shot, it's like, oh my God,
Autopilot.
there's the shot. Autopilot, save me, right? Bung, and off the arrow would go.
And I answered him, but I'm asking you that question.
I want to hear your answer. No, I want to hear your answer.
This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
How do you target a buck and get a giant, like consistently like you have?
Yeah, there was literally like 30 tents, and I thought, what in the world? And we go down there, and it was a school for high school kids. It was a class they were taking in the summer, but I'm looking at the deer, and then I'm looking down, and I got this line of kids watching me, and I got nervous. I was like, man. Get a heavier arrow. You're going to range find before you shoot, and that's helped a lot with penetration, with impact.
Yeah.
So, I think nowadays my philosophy has shifted a little bit there, where I, rather than shooting as light and fast as I can, I want a little more kinetic energy in the air, and I want to knock them down when I hit them. Yeah. The fire, I think, is when you see somebody that hunts hard, they hunt public land, they're pounding it like you are, and they have success.
Yeah.
I think that fuels you a little bit, too.
I agree.
We hunt hard, and we trust each other, but we keep it light. We have fun.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that and not just grind through it, you're not going to be successful every time, but you're going to have a better experience.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Gritty Bowman podcast. We're at the Western Hunt Expo. I'm here with the wonderful Gritty Bowman and Kip Fowler, the mule deer stalker. And Kip, we've known each other for, when did we meet? 2010?
It's been a while, 7-8 years. Yeah, maybe before that.
Yeah. And it's an interesting story how we met.
It was a parking lot in Reno at 2 a.m., right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it doesn't matter. We don't hunt it anymore, but it was in the northwest corner of Colorado. I had hiked in several, 8 miles, and I saw a guy behind 15s in my glassing spot, and I'm like, crap. And it was a buddy of yours.
Yeah.
And I didn't totally recognize him, but I knew I saw his face before somewhere, and that took a couple minutes of talking with him, and then he said, yeah, I got a buddy glassing over here, and I saw you come around the corner. I'm like, that's Kip Fowler. That's not the guy you want to see in your area.
Yeah. And how'd you know Kip?
The mule deer state, you had shot the Superman buck.
Yeah.
And there was a...
Tell me about that.
Yeah, why don't you tell us about that? Because that buck was
ridiculous. The Superman buck?
Yeah,
that buck... So that was a buck I killed in 2007 here in Utah, and had found him early in the summer with one of my good friends and tried to keep an eye on him all summer, and ended up taking him the second day of the hunt in Utah. But he was a big non-typical, scored almost 230. Just a big, neat, wide, almost a 35-inch deer. And it got a lot of publicity because it was killed on a general unit here in Utah. With
you made enemies with that.
I did, unfortunately. Guys have told me I ruined the front, and obviously never. In fact, what's funny is it got posted up, and I never did. There was nothing social media back then,
right?
And even I didn't do a lot of websites, internet, not much. So a friend of mine eventually said, "Hey, I saw your buck on this specific website."
But
I didn't even know what it was. No, I didn't even know what it was. So I had to go look it up and read the thread, and that was kind of my first introduction into what happens when you get things get posted up online. But that's right. Kind of that. It put a lot of publicity on that unit. But I mean, they're killing good stuff all over the state now. But at the time, it was a neat buck, and it was a fun story. And then since then, it's been a wild ride.
So Aaron, you knew him from that.
I knew him from that and other things as well. I think you wore Badlands at that time when they tried to pimp you out. But I mean, I knew him through. At that time, I wasn't on. I didn't even really have a phone, right? I was not. I had just started doing this outdoor life thing, and I was on some forums.
Yeah.
But through the grapevine, you hear of these hunters, and Kip's not. You're not a self promoter at all. In fact, if you look in the dictionary of self promoter, at the bottom, Kip's there that shows what a self-promoter is not, right? He's just not. I couldn't get him to – I knew who he was immediately, and I'm, like, nudging him, trying to get info out of him. I was like, I know who you are, dude. But you've shot 7, 8, 9 bucks over 180, couple over 200, right?
Yeah.
With a bow.
Yeah.
And then in that unit where you and I met, which isn't known that well, that wilderness area up there is not as known. But if you get back there and you work hard, you shot a buck in there and all the horns broke off of it. It was on the cover of Eastman's, wasn't it?
That one wasn't on the cover, but that was a crazy buck. And the funny thing was, so we hike into this basin clear up in there, and we had the impression, and our previous scouting trips in the summer led us to believe that there wouldn't be anybody in there.
Yeah.
So we get in there the night before the hunt, and there's like 30 tents at the bottom of this basin.
You're kidding.
So not kidding. There was literally like 30 tents, and I thought, what in the world? And we go down there, and it was a school for high school kids. It was a class they were taking in the summer, so they weren't hunting.
Wow.
But when we spotted these bucks opening morning and decided to go after them up in these cliffs, these kids were right there. And so we were going to go after these bucks, and these kids said, do you care if we watch? So we actually gave them our spotting scopes.
Yeah.
And so we make our move. We get positioned on these deer, and I start to move in. And it was funny because I kept looking at the deer, and it was bedded under these cliffs and ice patches.
And you're at like 12,000
Yeah,
feet.
this was high. I think that's the highest I've ever killed a buck, was right at 12, and that was that buck. But I'm looking at the deer, and then I'm looking down, and I got this line of kids watching me, and I got nervous. I was like, man, I had stage fright. And but it ended up killing the deer. I shot it, and actually when it died, it fell and rolled probably 400 feet, and it broke every horn on its rack.
The photo in Eastman's, you had rubber bands on it, and you were holding the main beam.
Yeah, I was holding the whole main beam, broke off one side, and then I had a rubber band hold it. So if you look close, you'll see the rubber band on that deer. But these kids that got to watch, they hadn't seen anything like that. And their instructor sent me a note later, texted me and said, hey, that was actually the coolest thing these kids saw all summer.
Trip. Yeah,
they said that was incredible to watch. So, but I did get nervous.
Yeah,
I did get nervous.
That's funny.
So on the Superman buck, when you said you found it in the summer and then you got it on the second day of the season, like I had a couple of guys come up to me, earlier today, and they're public land dudes, and they have a game camera up, and they have this picture of this buck it's a big deer. In fact, I'm curious what you think it would score. And here's a picture of it. And so it's obviously August, right? And it's in velvet. They're like, okay, we've seen it, and then we went back during rifle and muzzleloader and tried to kill it, but never saw it anywhere. And they're like, could you do a podcast helping us figure out how to kill this thing?
I mean, what's so tough is like when I found that deer, that particular deer, Superman. You have a couple concerns. One or other guy's going to be in the area, so I spent as much time. I would go back in a couple times a week trying to find him. Yeah, because you're always worried in that high country if they move one basin over, which is easy to do. Yeah, they're gone. So I kept trying to keep tabs on them, and then I was also trying to find if anybody else was watching them, because public land. Totally different ballgame than private property. It just is.
And this is before game cameras, really.
Yeah, well, no, there were cameras.
But you were using just spotter binos and stuff.
Yeah, and I was always hesitant to go into an area where, if you got a buck like that, I was always hesitant to go in and even approach the area. A couple of years later, kind of to that point, I found another buck that I ended up killing that went 214. Mm-hmm. Same type of terrain, same class of deer. But I felt comfortable. I would watch him bed down, and when I had him bedded and I knew where he was, I went in and set up. In fact, I went in and set my camp up. I had to camp right in his transition area, but I wanted to make sure if I'm going to go in and either set a camera up or set camp up or stash gear or stash water, I want to put eyes on him first and make sure I'm not going to go in and booger him out of there, and then go in, and it ended up working out. But man, usually I'm so cautious to go anywhere into an area like that if I don't have eyes on the deer and know where he's at.
Well, and you pulled out of the area you and I were at after you found probably a 180 buck, 185 buck. That was that big non-typical. Yeah. Because it was only deer.
Yeah, it was the only one.
And I spent a lot of time in there, and I can tell you there was one deer we found that probably went 170. But he found a toad, but that was the only good buck. And we're talking in a big area.
It was a big area, but there was that one good deer.
Well, and in that case, that is an 8-mile journey crossing many mountain ranges to get to. It's a lot higher risk than something you can, go to quicker.
So do you find, like, if you find him early season like that, they're not there late season?
I can't say that for sure. Usually when we're finding, it's been interesting that, I don't know, to answer your question, but we found deer in July, August, and we found them again. But October, things just get tough. High country, the deer aren't out as much.
Yeah.
They're tougher to find. So I can't accurately answer that. But we've seen deer in August, September, and then they've transitioned down, and guys have killed them 2-3 months later, and they're 5-6 miles away. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And more guys are trying to track that pattern now, where you'll have a deer found high country, and then, again, with social media, a lot of times you'll find a deer in August, September, disappears on you, and you don't know where it went. But now everything that's getting killed is getting posted up, and you can start to piece it together. Hey, I saw this deer that just got killed last week.
Which is a little freaky.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different world that way, but you can almost piece some of those puzzle pieces together and figure out based on where you saw it in July or August and where it was killed in November.
So how do you like to do it then?
As far as
how do you target a buck and get a giant like consistently like you have?
It's so much of it's just getting out, trying to get your eyes out into as many places as you can, and it's tough. I mean, I'm balancing as we all are. I got kids and I got work, and
how many kids do you have?
We have 7.
Yeah,
so we got a lot of kids. So I have to. That's obviously priority number one for me. But amidst that balance, when I was younger, I just felt like I had more freedom to do that. And now, when I have more limited time, I try to cover as much ground as I can. And we usually try to find 2 or 3 bucks that we want to go after.
This is before hunting season.
Yeah, so this is before we start. We usually start in early July, and then we'll go out and try to spread out. There's a couple guys that I hunt with that we'll spread apart. We'll find the best bucks that we can, and then we're literally, okay, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, and then as the hunt approaches and you'll see guys scouting more, you start to put that into your plan. This buck that we found, that's a number 1 buck. There's a lot of guys looking at him. Let's go to plan B. So an example of this is 2 years ago, my friend Matt Bateman killed a buck. That was a big typical that went over 200 gross. We haven't netted him out yet, but we found him in July, and we didn't even think twice about going back after him. We found him. He's in a popular area, an area we just thought, well, the odds of him being here in a month. So we went out and hunted another buck and another buck, 2 other deer, and then like 3 weeks later, I said, let's go back and maybe we can turn that buck up, and we went and happened to find it and kill it. But there's all these moving pieces, and again, when you're hunting public land, you just never know what's gonna happen.
If I was going to describe Kip, it would be hard work and common sense. Like, you are very methodical with everything you do with mule deer. Where I know a lot of guys that know the same deer you may have known in Colorado, let's say, in a couple of areas we know. They'll put their tent in the middle of the basin. They will not glass the basin before they drop into the basin. And every time, in my opinion, every time those deer see a human coming from a potential danger, especially I've seen guys come down their escape route, that's never good. You never want to come one. I've not had great luck. You come down their escape route, they won't be in that basin again because they feel their escape route is in danger now. You see guys like, oh, look at this awesome trail I found in this mythical basin. Let's hike down it. And there's all these bucks bedded, and you're coming down the area they know as a safety area. That's the area they go to get out. Yeah. And you don't do any of that. You don't do...
Try not to. Again, so... like this year we went out, and a lot of it's knowing the area. You'll draw a tag in Colorado or Nevada or Idaho or Utah, and you're going and trying to learn an area for the first time. And it's tough to know all of that ahead of time. It's tough to know if I scout from this ridge line over here, am I going to be putting myself in a bad wind spot? If I'm scouting from over here, is this where they're going to bed? And so when we go to scout an area, I try to stay so hands off and so out until we, after a day or two, could kind of get a feel for where the deer are, and then we can be a little more aggressive with scouting. But a lot of it, when you're going into an area for the first time, it's tough to know that up front. So
it is. Colorado specifically, especially in that northern corner, is so north central, northwest, but you can see so far. Yeah. And so you can scout from a long ways away. So you can watch Fred Baum, that big buck he killed, his first mule deer ever. You guys are built a lot alike. 203, first mule deer with a bow. He watched that deer for like 3 days, just watched what it did. Just
during the hunt?
During the hunt.
Yeah, and figured it out.
And then he went and slept by a rock, and it walked by the same rock. It walked by every day. Because when it would go in the timber, he didn't want to go in there and blow it.
Didn't want to mess it up.
So what he did is in the midnight, he crawled over to that rock and slept by it.
Wow.
Woke up when the sun came up and just literally hid by that rock, and sure as could be, that buck came out of the timber, or buck came from feeding to go back in the timber.
And he was there.
And he killed it. But you've done overnight sleeps in the tree stand before.
Yeah, that was a funny story too. But yeah, I had a neat, non-typical buck that was coming through a really small wooded patch, and it was coming through right at dark, and leaving early in daylight. And I thought the chances of trying to slip in and out of there without blowing him out,
just pretty slim.
So anyway, it was funny. A friend of mine, Brad, that works in a machine shop, I had him weld a tree stand with a platform big enough that I could lay down and sleep on it at night. And we hauled it in this ridiculous spot. We've got a picture of us hauling it in, and it's just, it looks so stupid. But yeah, I hiked in the night before the hunt and got to the stand about 4, and then, did everything I could to control my scent, hiked into the stand, and then slept in it. And that buck came below, he was right below me all night.
Yeah.
And nothing you can do. And then he actually moved out before it got day. But yeah, I could see no other way to try to kill that deer. I was going to mess it up if I tried to slip in the dark. And that's one thing a lot of guys, or at least when I've experienced mistakes, I'll try to move into an area in the dark to get set up to hunt, and you got to be really careful if you can't see what's around you. A lot of guys will watch a deer for weeks, whatever, and then go into an area in the dark to get set up and
blow it out.
Blow it out. Yeah,
I found that with blacktail hunting.
Probably worse.
I spent the night in a blacktail stand a couple times just because they come in and they're rutting underneath me and they're going crazy, and I see them on camera rutting all the way till morning, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to get down and spook them while they're in there, and so I'm waiting and I'm waiting, and then I'm like, now it's like midnight, and I've spent the night there and then had them rutting in the morning. But both times I did that stupid deer moved off just before you could see, just before shooting light.
Yeah, that deer.
But he was there all night.
Yeah, that deer I was trying to kill, I actually hunted that deer for 3 years. And I had little situations like that with that deer so many times where I was so close and never ended up harvesting that deer. But you look back and laugh at those instances, but you hopefully learn from them.
Spending the night in a tree stand sucks.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Unless you got a buddy that can weld you a super sleeper platform.
And then, you can't just keep camping in it because you stink it up.
And you got to get down and clean up. And so that was a long night, though. That was a long couple nights in that stand.
Did Casey Harbertson, he spent the night, didn't he?
He did, and it was funny because we were elk hunting, and there's a lot of the same common sense applies for elk, whatever than mule deer. But with Casey, we were above him, and we'd hear this bull scream, and then we'd hear the estrus whine like a banshee. Yeah. And I'm like, that's Casey. That's got to be Casey. But it was driving that bull crazy. But a few things that guys have bugged me, knowing that I know you. Some of the questions they asked. One is, how do you train? You got 7 kids. What do you do for training? Because you don't have ample time off. So.
It's always, I got to get up in the morning. So, I've actually just been here at the Expo one day, and I've seen a lot of the guys that I see at the gym. But I mix it up. I do 3 days a week of hard cardio and lifting with my legs, then the other 3 upper body.
Yeah.
And I have a weight I try to maintain. So guys are all built differently, but I know a healthy weight for me was right around 160.
Yeah.
But I train 6 days a week, and I mix up cardio and lifting. I can't lift real heavy. I don't lift real heavy upper body, lower body, because I can feel my knees get tight and swollen. So I go light weights, a lot of reps, and try to maintain a certain weight for me. I know where that sweet spot is. And it's funny when you're out scouting in the summer, and we do a lot of hiking and scouting in the summer, I can tell when I'm too light.
Yeah.
You can tell when you're 5 pounds too light. I can tell when I'm 5 pounds too heavy. But that does come into play, as you guys know, when you're hunting that backcountry. That has to, and it's becoming a bigger.
I try to get a little fatter right before season.
It's actually not a bad idea.
Because what she did this year, when you do 10 hunts back to back to back to back, and their backpack hunts are 5.
Yeah.
Going in a little fat never hurt anyone because you're coming out skinny or at least depleted. The other thing, glass. When we were all glassing off tripods, binoculars, but you run 8s or 10s, and then, by the way, remember you had pink eye.
I did have pink eye, and then I asked to borrow your
binoculars.
I went through your binos, and he paused I was like, no, I'll be careful, but I could see you thinking, are you kidding?
But you just run binos and a spotter, right?
Yeah.
You run, but your buddy Brad, he runs 15s.
So Brad had 15s up there. We normally don't do that. We really don't. We'll, now when I'm scouting, I take my little 10x32 EL Swarovskis. They're small, but when we're hiking and hunting now, we have the Geovids that have the built-in rangefinder, and they're pricey, but they angle compensate. But yeah.
Yeah.
And it depends on the species too. When we're out moving a lot with muleys, this year we're in Colorado, And after a couple days of hard hunting, we just left our spotters in camp.
Yeah.
Because we were finding everything we wanted to hunt. We could spot them up with our binos.
Did you get anything this last
No, we
year?
should have. We hunted Colorado and we did a 10-day backpack-in hunt, me and Matt. And Matt and I just laughed. We had more opportunities in those 10 days than I could have imagined. And if you'd have told me before that hunt that we'd come out without killing a good buck, I'd have been surprised because we had so many of those opportunities you look forward to all year, and we never ended up putting a tag on a good buck. So great hunt though.
Yep. No, that's good. I mean, I don't talk to Matt as much, mostly because schedule wise or whatever. But you or he or both of you guys have you've been pretty lucky over the last 4 or 5 years. Matt's cranked some good
Matt's
ones.
killed some phenomenal deer. And it's funny. He's a person, you put him in a kill situation, and my chips are down. He's going to kill. And we've all been in situations where you should kill, and something goes wrong. He's one of the guys that I've hunted with like that, where consistently, time and time again, we'll find an animal, and guys have asked us, well, who gets to hunt it? I mean, do you go after it or Matt go? Which one of you guys goes after it? We don't even care. Whoever's in the best position to kill, the other guy sets up and help. And Matt is somebody that in a kill situation,
it's going down.
He just kills. He's made some unbelievable shots. The first time I hunted with him, the first year, we actually hunted together and had a buck spotted and bedded and put a plan together, and it worked out. He made an unbelievable shot on a 190 typical buck, and I've just seen with Matt over the years, he's done that so consistently, so that now when we're in a hunting situation, my confidence in him is probably higher than myself. You're doubting yourself, but I just have confidence if we put a plan together and an opportunity to kill presents, Matt can put the hammer on it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, what's your bow? What arrow weight setup and the stuff like that?
So my bow, I've actually shot Matthews for quite a long time and switched to the Hoyt Defiant this year, the Hoyt Carbon Defiant. I got it set on 70 pounds. I shoot gold tips. I shoot 100 grain Grim Reaper expandable, so my arrow weight's just over 400 grain. It's not heavy.
Yeah.
I was below 400 and I killed a couple deer, but I was lucky to kill them because I actually didn't get the penetration. I thought I should get it that distance, so I actually went with a different philosophy of, now that we can range find everything, get a heavier arrow. You're going to range find before you shoot, and that's helped a lot with penetration, with impact. So, I think nowadays my philosophy has shifted a little bit there, where I, rather than shooting as light and fast as I can, I want a little more kinetic energy in the air, and I want to knock them down when I hit them.
Yeah, so. I not too far from where I met you, up and over two mountain ranges. I shot a mule deer 2 years before I met you, 3 years, with a 395 grain arrow, and shot it downward in its bed, and the arrow basically just stopped. And then that was the last time I ever shot an arrow under 500 grains. I shoot 580, 550 on everything.
I my philosophy there changed, and I think you need, but a lot of it again goes to before, when you're guessing yardage and you don't have a marked yardage, you want to be going as fast as you can. And now with bows the way they are now, you can still shoot fast, but you can be throwing 450, 500 grains out there. So that's the way we're going now, and we've had a lot of success killing animals that, you wonder if you hadn't blown through them. But I'm shooting just over 400 grains, which isn't way heavy. But
and Matt works for Grim Reaper.
So Matt works. He's the national product manager for Grim Reaper, and they have a lot of options. I shoot the mechanical, a traditional 1 3/8 cut mechanical, but they've got new 4-blade stuff, 4-blade mechanicals, and you can have that argument all day about broadheads, but the only thing I can go back to is what I've experienced, and I haven't shot anything. Matt and I started hunting together in 2008, actually about the time I met you, and I haven't shot anything else since then. And if I've lost an animal, it's on me. It's not the broadhead. So.
What would like words of wisdom for mule deer hunters? Because I would say mediocre mule. I'm really good at finding them, but I see a 160, which you've given me crap before. I see a 160-ish deer, it's probably going to die. Like, I want to move on to the next animal. I don't mess around as much. What would you, for all the questions, answer them for the guys? What would you say your number one key to success would be?
It's I love it. I see these shirts that say bow hunting sucks, and I laugh because we all have been in those moments where you're so frustrated. I love being out. I love bow hunting. It's such a challenge, and I think you got to always ask yourself, are you enjoying? Are you just grinding for the sake of grinding? Or I love going out and hunting, and if I go out and guys see pictures of stuff we kill, and you almost get the impression because you see everything that's killed.
You don't see the heartache.
Yeah, well, you just feel like so and so kills all the time, and I'm like, for every deer Matt and I kill together, there's 40 days out in the field hunting where we don't, but we love it. And so I will say this: it sure helps to have somebody you're hunting with that you trust, that you enjoy being with, and that you can keep it light with. When we were in Colorado, if I was out there hunting alone, you can do it, and guys do it alone, and I don't have the confidence that they have as much fun as I have when I'm hunting like with Matt, because we hunt hard and we trust each other, but we keep it light, we have fun.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that and not just grind through it, you're not going to be successful every time, but you're going to have a better experience.
Yeah, it'll help.
And I think that's helped with our success is we've enjoyed it, we've had fun with it, and we don't always come home tagged out, but we always have fun.
Yeah. Well, and when you're killing deer, like if you're shooting deer the size of the ones I shoot, you kind of have to kill one every year. But if you're shooting a cranker, you can skip a couple years.
Well, we've got a couple years where it's been tough for us, but I love doing it, and that's actually been fun. Running it like meeting you out there in Colorado. I've considered it's funny how often that comes up in conversation where somehow I end up telling the story about me and meeting you out in Colorado, and it's become such a small network within hunting. The net has been cast wider. There's so many guys, but with social networking now, it's a tight-knit group of guys, and where you can share another guy's success without being jealous about it.
Yeah.
But see somebody that killed just a slob and hear how they did it, it's motivating if you can do that without getting jealous and butthurt about it. But that contributes to the fire, I think, is when you see somebody that hunts hard, they hunt public land, they're pounding it like you are, and they have success.
Yeah.
I think that fuels you a little bit too.
I agree.
Yeah,
I don't know if that even answers your question.
Well, no, I think staying after it and enjoying what you do when you give up 2 days into the hunt on an 8-day hunt, you're not going to be very successful.
Yeah, a lot of our stuff we've taken day 6, 7, or 3 weeks down the road.
Well, some of the stories you've told me you've definitely are committed because you stay after it. And you keep coming back and back and back. And I'm, for me, I'd be like, well, I shot a 160. I'm on my 4th hunt after that, man. All mediocre animals. But yeah, I mean, the thing with you wouldn't say if you had a mouthful of it, you just don't brag. And so I know a lot of the stuff people probably don't understand since they only just see the end picture, the end, the arc of the story. They don't get to hear anything in the middle of what it took for you to get some of those animals where I know. And like you said, you didn't see the 40, 50 days packing in water and all this preseason scouting. So,
and it's fun to hear the stories now. And I think everybody's. I'm hoping guys are balancing out. There's a difference between bragging about yourself and look what I did, and let me tell you the story of how it happened. And I think there's a difference there. And anyway, I like hearing the story. For the sake of the story, I like hearing. The mindset of the hunter and what they do. And I find myself not as interested if it's look at me, look what I did. But let me tell you the story of how this happened. That's where I find it very interesting. And that's what's so fun is when you hear these stories and experiences. And that's why they're being told and shared.
Let me tell you the story of us getting our ass kicked in Alberta.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
Yeah.
It was a rough one. We got it done, but it was one of those areas where you're seeing 180 to a 200-inch deer every day, but then you're seeing them go into a hole that you are not certain you'll ever see them again.
Yeah, I hadn't hunted a lot of mule deer prior to this, and not in open country like that, really.
Yeah, but that's a bucket list place for me.
It was phenomenal.
See, I'm horrible at still hunting. He's really good at it.
Really?
I'm more aggressive. I can be sneaky when I have to be.
Well, you killed a good buck up there this year, though.
I did. I killed a pretty good buck. But it was the kind of thing where he flagged me out. I would have never killed it without him. But he was the ninja 1,200 yards across from me with a little orange flag laying on his stomach going like this. Go to there. I kept going over. And I've got a recurve, so it's not exactly like a lethal weapon of my years past. So when we dropped in on that and I shot it, I was almost exhausted from mental anxiety because when the guide or the outfitter, he's a buddy of ours, Lander, he didn't go up. Trust me, he didn't go up with me. He was, 80 yards back or something?
Yeah.
He looked at me and he goes like this, and I was like,
I think.
I'm like, I hit it. I hit it with a giant broadhead, but it ran fast. But I mean, we ended up getting the deer, obviously. But those deer were pretty. You would like it though, because it's a very. If you're a tactician, Alberta's the way to go.
It's a chess match.
Yep,
almost.
it's a chess match.
Yeah.
That's why I liked it. Is
He's addicted.
I'm really patient,
He'll be back.
So and methodical. So when I just watch them. I just like it, and then I see where they bed, and then I'm like, okay, I think if I do this, if I do that, and it took me a while to start to figure it out. It took me a few days to get the feel for it, and there's a lot of belly crawling and a lot of
Cactus.
Yeah, and what a lot to learn too in terms of there's so many deer in the space, and what was different from Colorado that we experienced in Alberta was the deer just behaved
Different.
You
They
can
were
say
really
the deer in
hyper-
Colorado are dumb. The ones in Alberta run when they see
hyper
you.
intelligent. And so that was different because what would happen is you could circle, 400 yards below where that you saw that deer bed, but it would cause a chain reaction, and they would run up the coulee and take every deer in the coulee out. And they not one. If they see one deer move, they all move. They all would leave the canyon.
One of the plays that Lander sent me on, I blew 4 does out. They would have never blown out in any other unit I've ever hunted. I peeked my head up, and one of the does looked up. I ducked back down, and I was like, I'm just going to wait for 30, 40 seconds.
That's
a
what
minute.
you do, like in
they're
Colorado.
Gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. Yeah.
Well, I looked back up, and there was
Yeah.
no more does, and there's an avalanche of deer running out the bottom of the coulee, and I'm like, well, I guess I need a ride. 'Cause
And
there's no more
over
deer.
the top, and that was different for me. And so the one thing that most of the stocks got ruined by other deer that got wind of you on your way there, or that saw you. So you have to go to get to that buck. You had to clear all these other areas first,
And then make your play.
then make your play over there.
Yeah.
And that
And
took sometimes most of a morning.
Which, it's funny, we were talking about Colorado because we've noticed in different areas, hunting them in Utah, hunting them in Colorado, they do behave different.
Yeah.
They really do. So we were making different plays in Colorado, totally opposite of what we would do in Utah because we were realizing these deer are just acting different. And
I saw Greg Poole was on the podcast the other day, and he took that 100-yard shot at that oryx.
Yeah.
And people were asking about it, so I reposted it. And we hashed that out on a podcast. But a guy got on there and said the only way that was possible is because that was a completely tame animal, because there's no animal that will stand there and let you look at it from 100 yards. I've seen bucks in Colorado this year, like big buck, just stand there at 50 yards and just look at me during rifle season.
Yeah. I was going to say, in that area, we met when I was in there this year with a couple Navy dudes, and we had a buck that, this is a week before season. It wasn't a giant 150, the standard Colorado buck. He came through our camp at 80 yards away, and I'm out there, took a piss. It's looking at me. It started feeding.
Yeah.
That buck just hadn't seen a man, but it didn't know it hadn't been shot at yet. So, in my opinion, until they get some arrows flung at them or bullets flying by them, they're not as cautious.
And they see hikers and they see other people out there. And, we joked about that. Maybe we wear a turquoise shirt or we just run around with the fanny pack. And actually, one of the bucks we made a play on in Colorado, that's basically what we did.
Oh, I think there's I do that with blacktail. I've told people a lot of times, when I walk to my tree stand, I don't bother sneaking in, especially when I'm in a city hunting a city
blacktail.
buck. For blacktail, it doesn't do me any good. In fact, they see the sneaking and they're like, predator. I walk through and I'm just a guy walking from one house to the next, and they behave completely different.
I think there is something to that. I think when they see somebody trying to sneak, the alert goes up. Yeah, we've had situations here in Utah, the same thing where we're trying to sneak in on an animal, and a jogger runs right by, and they're looking at us, and the jogger they're focused on what they sense as danger, and
they know.
Mountain goats are the same way. We blew a big billy out off of Gray's Peak in Colorado. Blew it out we ran a long ways for a goat. And it went over and laid down with some other goats, and 6 hikers walked 50 yards from it. But they were in orange and Arcteryx and Mammut and didn't care, but they didn't like camo, not at all.
No, and I've seen that where they can tell by your body language and how you're, their survival's their game, whether you're hunting them or not. And I found like times where we walk by a blacktail and we're just like, and you see one, you're like, oh, there's a deer, and you're not supposed to act like a predator, like you're walking along and you're like, oh, there's a deer. They know all of a sudden. You're like, oh, look at that. There's a deer right there.
I think there's
and then you walk by and then you draw as you're walking and then you turn and then you shoot. And they just stand there.
We had a situation where I had my son Easton, and we had a deer bedded down, and Easton, we're trying to guide Easton in, sneaking in on it. And, once he got within 100 yards and was sneaking, and the deer picked him up, and the deer watched him for a while, and he got to within 60, and the deer spooked, and the deer ended up going over. And here's a lady running with her dog on a trail, and it couldn't have cared less. It walked right past this lady. So to that point, you laugh about it, but I think there's probably something to this.
Oryx, this is the fourth time he tried to hunt it. So he did three stalks, I think, where he's sneaking, and Greg Poole is not a small man.
He's 6'6", 6'7", and 280?
280.
Yeah.
So he's trying to sneak, and I can only picture Greg being sneaky. But, no offense, Greg, but
you're not a set of car keys.
he's trying to sneak up on this car, on this critter, and it can see him. And I think it knows, like, this guy's sneaky. Mm-hmm. So finally he's like, forget it, and he just walks at it, and it stands there and lets him walk at it because he doesn't look like a predator anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of look back, walk a little ways, look back, and the thing is with a 100-yard shot, ethical or not ethical, animals know that safety circle, right?
Yep.
Most of them, it's 100 yards.
Especially if you're in an area, and I've been in those in Oregon, where it's like archery only.
Yeah.
Where these animals are really only hunted with a bow. Especially, I think also they're used to the season. They know when rifle season is present and when it's archery season.
Yeah.
And I've seen elk and deer just bounce out of bow range and chill. Yeah. They feel safe.
Elk are the same way. I mean, when Colton and I a couple of years ago, we shot those elk, they didn't know what was going on, but we were in the last patch of trees, cow calling, which you shouldn't be doing, but they were young and dumb. And they stayed at that 100-yard. Yeah. They just kept calling back at 100, kind of circling, and one of them stupid enough to come a little closer, and I killed it. But they had that 100-yard safety circle.
Yep. So. Absolutely. So I think that has every bit. That's just part of the strategy. Some people are like, well, that's cheating. You just walked right at it and pretend like a jogger. Dude, I'm going to do whatever it takes to kill it.
Matter, does it? Doesn't matter.
That's part of my, using human intelligence, to outsmart it. So
take every advantage. But
you kind of have to.
And we've laughed at that because you almost think, oh, is that?
It doesn't really feel as manly.
It doesn't
Let's
feel,
just admit it.
And it doesn't feel as legitimate. But having talked with the two of you about it today, I'm changing tactics now.
What? Yeah,
I'm throwing all my camo away.
That's right. You're going to wear Nikes and jog.
When did it become that easy to kill an animal anyway? It's not exactly their gimmies, but I mean, people ask me with camo, and I'm like, hey, sometimes, depending upon, not for mule deer, I'm generally going to be in camo, but for goats and sheep, a lot of time I'm in solids on hiking trails in Colorado. Because of the human traffic. You can't hunt weekends in Colorado because of for goat and sheep on some units.
Yeah.
You wear I don't wear bright orange, but I wear solids because to me, they've already had several seasons of getting shot at. Mm-hmm. By now, that guy's fishing. He's okay. There's that jack wagon, in Optifade. We don't like him.
We don't like that.
Yeah. So anyhow. Well, cool. Well, we should probably wrap this up. Most of my neck's about to lock up where I'm not going to be able to look left for the next 2 hours.
You're going to need to sit in this chair while I get the couch.
Yeah, we're going to swap it up. But yeah, man, I'm glad I ran into you on the mountain several years ago. It's been fun. We only talk like once or twice every year, but it's usually
it's enough.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We keep track. Usually, you send me some picture of a giant animal, and then I send a couple like, "Hey, well, here's what I killed." But when you sent me Bateman's deer, I just shot like a 162, 164. I'm like,
you felt good about it before, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to send this photo back.
It's going to be hard to top that 186 Alberta with a recurve.
Yeah, and that's one thing I will say. The guys that do it traditional that is an unbelievable step for me, and I've had some friends had some successes here. Actually, you had a great year, but friends of mine that have. In fact, I was just waving to a friend of mine that lives in Idaho now that killed everything under the sun with a recurve. Unbelievable hunter, and he went back full traditional. Yeah. And I just said, I don't know if I had a 180 buck in front of me at 40 yards, if I couldn't shoot at it.
Yeah.
But he's killed stuff with his recurve that.
I met him this morning.
Did you? Yeah. I mean, he's an unbelievable hunter. So when I see guys doing full traditional, like what you've done this year, it's incredibly impressive to me. There's nothing but respect for that. That's incredible to me.
It was a pain.
Yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet. I don't know if I'll ever do it.
Me either.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a couple of my buddies that used to give me crap about shooting far shots. Like, oh, it's about getting close. So now I'm like, well, where's your recurve? Go pick up your recurve. I did it, and I got it done. It's your turn now. Show me the money.
Well, you'll have a hard time topping 2016 with a recurve.
I'm not going to try because I'm going to go back to my compound.
You've done it. Been there, done that. Check that box.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Kip. Pleasure to meet you.
Yep.
In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America, and in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowman film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value. We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. We thank Kifaru, Mountain Ops, Hoyt, Vortex, Phelps Game Calls, Black Eagle Arrows, and Crispy Boots for supporting the Gritty Bowman. We love these companies and the people behind them. They truly make fantastic products. Please support them however you can. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.